Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I love this part of the program. I like to take the time to really acknowledge the guests that show up and acknowledge a few things about what I deem very expensive time. What a beautiful, precious commodity that has been given to every single being on this planet. 24 hours, so we all have the same amount. How we utilize it, that's all on you. The other is the journey. The journey houses many things: pain, wisdom, all of it, everything, the beauty of it, and the agony, as they say. And Doc is here to share both with us. And so we are honored to have her in our space today. Doc, I want to welcome you to Threads of Enlightenment. Tell the people everything that you do while you are here on this planet for this period of time.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled and honored to be here. I like your idea about time. I think I was listening to one of your other podcasts and you talk about 24 hours. We all have the same 24 hours every day. It's not something I've ever really thought about. We don't really know how much time any of us has on Earth, but we kind of know that we have 24 hours every day. And to really make the most of that is such a powerful idea that we share this with all of humanity. We have the same 24 hours, and what are we going to do with it? That just sounds like a really rich way to live, and hopefully what people who go through psychoanalysis would strive for, that they would make
Yeah,
the most every single minute of their 24 hours every single day. It's very
I think that's
profound.
the key. I think that's
Yeah,
the key because what it does when we look at life that way, it keeps us present.
absolutely
We see the expenditure of that time every second, every minute that goes by. And so you would
right.
want to live that time richly, if you will, so that you can extract the best um, for everything, for you and for those that are around you. Because when you live that way, it becomes tasteful. So, talk
Right.
to us. How we do this here, Doc, is that I want you to tell the people about what you have currently, because I told them, I said, all of the currently stuff always changes because once someone is open up to growth, they're always changing. So tell us
Mhm.
what you have done so far.
Well, so far I've been a psychoanalyst for over 30 years. I teach at a training institute, so we train psychoanalysts. I love to write and I love to tell stories. So when you write about psychoanalysis, you're writing very carefully about fact and you're paying close attention to fact. So I think at one point I was preparing for a conference and I was writing up a case study and I thought this is so much fun writing about one patient's life over the course of a long period of time. I should write a novel. So it just came to me. I don't even know from where, but I do love to tell stories. And if I was writing a novel, I could say whatever I want.
Yeah,
But of course, the story was going to be driven by who I am and what's in my mind and what I've carried in my body for 65 years is obviously going to come out into the story, along with all of the patients that I've treated over multiple decades, I suppose, at this point. I hate to say that, but it's been a while.
I think the book always resided in you and it was maturing as a seed does. And when it's time, it needs to be given birth. And so usually it takes time to go through and to learn and to um, uh, regurgitate and assimilate information. And then you produce your book or whatever your podcast. So we like to go back into the family. It is the first space by which we are residing there for some time in our life journey. And we want to have you give you a chance to introduce us to your family. What was that like as a young woman growing up in your space?
I guess my early life, I mean, my parents were very loving people. There was some dysfunction in the family, but we didn't know that. We just sort of carried on. Sister, and we sort of carried on and moved along through life. I think it's later on you realize how your early childhood affected you. And then I think pretty early on, I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to work with children. and I worked in a summer camp. And then I thought, oh, I want to work with kids. So I went and I studied, and I got a degree in education. And I started to work with disabled kids, emotionally disturbed kids. And I started to realize that teaching them how to read and write was easy, but their emotional lives were very, very interesting to me. Many
Mhm.
of these children were very smart. And I was like, why are they in special education? These are really smart kids. And over time, I started to realize they had emotional needs that were not met. So they weren't getting the support they needed at home. And they'd come to school, and there weren't enough resources in the regular mainstream for the teachers to help them. So they would stop doing work. They would start acting out, and people thought they were dumb, but they
Yeah.
weren't. They just
Yeah.
needed someone to sort of address some of these needs. So as I did this for a number of years, I thought I would like to be an analyst. I would like to work with kids. So then I'm switching careers now. I trained to be an analyst. And over time, my practice started to grow. And I think I was just so intrigued by what motivates people. How could smart children be doing so poorly in school? There's got to
Mhm.
be, they're carrying something that's sort of a mask that's
Yeah.
holding them back from being who they are. So as I started to train, I started to see that everyone kind of does this, not just kids.
Yeah.
People get adulthood and they're still acting out in dysfunctional ways when there's something underneath that can't get to the surface, that can't say, this is who I am. So that kind of work intrigued me. I think another thing that influenced my education and my just interest in the world was the idea of symbolism, that people communicate symbolically,
Mhm.
sometimes without even realizing it. There's always some kind of deeper meaning underneath that. And what I thought of the other day is that I was at a museum. I was probably in college with a couple of friends of mine. I think we were at the cloisters. And one of the friends said, oh, you can tell what period this sculpture was made because of the flow of the drape. And I thought, what? How could you really know that? That there is such symbolism and
Yeah.
meaning in the art. I thought, I have to study art history. So I switched my major, I stopped pre-med, and I studied art history, and I kept biology. But I became fascinated with art history, which really looks at symbolism.
Yeah.
And that's a very crucial element in psychoanalysis. What is the person saying without words? What are they communicating to you in some other way that they may not even be aware of, that is filled with meaning? And for them to fully know themselves, at some point they have to unpack, as we say, unpack that to understand what's underneath. What is this drapery telling me about where this sculpture came from?
Yeah.
So I
I have
those
a
two were very impactful things in my life.
I have a
Oh,
question. Where did this young girl get that from? That inquisitiveness. Here's this young girl. You said your family, some dysfunctionality there. Um, where did she pick up this inquisitiveness about the human condition, if you will, the human mind? How old were you when you began to notice that you were
mhm.
interested in that?
That's a good question. My father was an incredibly intelligent man, and he always told each of us, you can do anything you want. You can do anything you want. And he was fairly successful himself, but he never got to college, so that held him back a little bit. But he would tell us you can do whatever you want. And he was a very curious person. My mother was very creative. She sang, she drew, she had a very creative spirit that was open to the world. But I think in addition to that, both of my grandmothers were powerful, powerful women. My
Mm,
father's mother came over from Austria on a boat when she was 15 years old to meet up with her sister in New York. Very powerful woman. So there's some drive in her to be who she was.
yeah,
Staying back in Austria wasn't working for her. I mean, to come over on a boat across the Atlantic in early 1900s at a 15-year
yeah,
old, that took courage and
yeah.
strength and curiosity for some better life. My mother's mother was a very powerful Irish woman who had several children. and her husband was non-functional, so she had to raise the family herself. Very powerful woman who loved to tell stories. The
Yeah.
Irish Shawnee, or an Irish woman who tells stories, and I admired that, and I just listened to her talk. And it wasn't until way later that I realized I have that in me. I love to tell these familial um, people who were very powerful. When you're a kid, you don't realize it,
Yeah.
but these people really had a very strong effect, very powerful effect upon me. And I am so grateful to them for that.
And now I see the beginning of the thread, if you will, as
You
far
were
as
part
where you're,
of
where that curiosity came from. So here you are, this young girl, exposed to such wonderful characters, if you will, knowledge. You're looking at your mom, you're getting that artist approach, your grandmother's that curiosity, as well as this uh, go-getter kind of attitudes. You have the storyteller. You have your dad who is instilling within you that the world is yours. Simply
Mhm.
go after it.
Yeah.
This young girl is collecting all this data, and she is now beginning to look into herself. What did she discover as this young girl? Because you said you went to a summer program to teach, and that even sparked something deeper within you. So she's collecting all of this data, Doc. Um, what was happening to this girl with all this powerful information and feeling and stuff going on around her on a daily basis?
I don't think I knew. I really don't think I knew. And I just knew that teaching children, I was drawn to that and I had to follow that path. I wasn't sure where that would take me. Would I, moving from this camp environment in the country to a classroom in the city, am I going to like that? I wasn't really sure. I think it was the emotional component, though, of what
Hmm.
these children were feeling and what they couldn't express and what was underneath. That I suppose I saw in myself what's underneath me that I want to express, that I
Yeah,
want to say. And something about that, I was so drawn to the emotionality. What makes people feel the way they do? What makes them do the things they do? That was just fascinating to me. And again, the idea of symbolism, that people are saying and doing things that they don't even know what
yeah,
they're saying sometimes. But a
yeah.
keen ear, one like yours, can what a person is really saying, what they're longing for.
Yeah, I think
And
it's what they're longing for
right.
that drives us. There's this, and I tell people they're meditating all day long. Children meditate as well. You see them coming into this zone, and they're visualizing. They're doing using all the tools as young kids that
Mhm.
we are programmed to discard. And later on in life, we're going to use those very same things
Right.
to save ourselves from the mess that we find ourselves in. So here's this girl. She is curious now. She's on her way. She made a decision. She's heading into college because she's driven. She was pulled there, not driven, pulled there. And the curiosity has landed you into the college. You began to study. You're gathering information. You're bringing all of these different tools within your space as to enlarging your understanding.
Mhm.
How was that information as you were drinking it up? How did you begin to assimilate it into you? And what did it cause you to do?
Well, I think when I first went to college, I wasn't sure. I had not finished working at camp yet, and I thought I went into a pre-med program, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Classes I was taking in college, physics, organic chemistry, calculus, and my friend studying classics in a little tiny classroom with a woman who had done archaeological digs, and she was loving her classes. And I'm in a 500 room auditorium hearing about organic chemistry, thinking, oh my God, get me out of here. That's where one switch happened. Like, I
Yeah.
can't do this. I remember I told my father, I can't do pre-med. I hate these classes. And he said, you have to do whatever makes you happy. I could cry thinking about it. I was afraid to tell him. I thought he would be
Yeah.
so disappointed. He's like, you have to do what makes you happy. And then
Wow.
I switched to art history. I continued with biology. And then I went into teaching. And then I just thought, I am interested in so much more than this surface level stuff. I go deep underneath that. That's where I'm happy. That, that's that's where the messy stuff is,
Yeah.
underneath all. And you said something very profound earlier, that if we can accept the mess, and I tell my patients this all the time, you can
Yeah.
accept the bad, uglier parts of yourself and embrace them, you will be
Yeah.
much happier, rather than trying to deny them. Because we all have
Yeah.
messes, and it's okay. We're all
Yeah.
human.
That's the key there. I think we have a chance to see it because in our mind we have created this giant thing, and it is so big and messy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can accept that, the power that is in that acceptance, and when we
Mm-hmm.
go beyond the acceptance, when we begin to love that,
Right.
oh, that is it right there. That is the beginning of the beginnings. Because when
Mm-hmm.
we do that, now we are on a honest journey. Beyond that, we are not being honest. And I think I tell people the journey comes to help us to begin to live honestly, because we have to look at ourselves and begin to
It also
ask,
of
what's
energy.
going?
It
Yes.
also a lot of energy. If you're trying to hold down the bad parts of yourself, or the parts of yourself, I want to say, use the word bad, like, you're using a lot of energy. If you can accept that, you're releasing a lot of energy, which can now be used creatively, which
Yeah.
can now be in a way that nourishes you, rather than warding off something that you want to believe is not there. I tell patients all the time, we're all human. There's good and bad
Yeah.
in all of us. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
really okay. Doesn't
We
mean
all
you
can.
act. Oh,
Yeah.
it's there.
I tell them, I would say we're all killers under the right circumstances.
We are all much safer if we know we have pulses.
Yeah. And so here you are, you've gained all of this knowledge, you're moving in your life, and you are acquiring it. And as you are moving through life, talk to us as this young woman now. She's in college, she is, as I said, gaining information, she's learning so much, and she is inquisitive about all things. How was she with herself?
How was she with herself? Well, I was a black sheep in my family.
Hmm.
Kind of went the other way. Like, I listened to jazz when everybody else was listening to pop songs. Like, I remember people saying to me, what is that? Oh, I know. I love Al Jarreau. What is always this sort of black sheep outside the box quality,
Yeah,
which I love.
I love
So
that.
get rid of that. It's like, no, I'm not. I don't think inside the box. I'm gonna be out here. I'm gonna do these crazy things. So there
Yeah,
was that. So there was the flip side was I sometimes feel like I didn't quite fit in.
yeah.
I'm smooth for some other people, and it's always rough and bumpy for me. But maybe that's okay.
But that takes a journey to even accept that, because sometimes many of us are trying not to hurt someone else's feelings and so forth,
Right,
and we are trying to protect them as much as we're trying to protect us.
right.
As you're moving through, Doc, and let's say you told us earlier that you're moving from different fields into the other fields because your purpose simply was to get deeper.
Right.
When did in your life, in your personal life, did you begin to dig deeper in you? Because that has to be, as much as we go into the profession of, within our profession of, many of us still hide within our profession of, and we don't give an opportunity to deal with ourselves because we are quote unquote so busy. So talk
Right.
talk to us about you in the sense as you're moving professionally. You had mentioned you started to practice, you started getting busy and successful. How were you dealing with that? How did you started to on your personal journey, Doc, with all this information, and you want to get deeper? How did you begin to get deeper with you? Because that's an important journey.
Well, I think my psychoanalytic training probably was the final step to get me where I go. When I
Yeah.
took my first class at the Center for Modern Psychoanalytic Studies with Dr. Deborah Margolis, we were reading about Freud, and I thought, oh God, he goes deep. He understands. I thought I died and went to heaven. I am in the right place.
Yeah.
So there's that. When you study at a training institute, you have to be in psychoanalysis yourself.
Yeah.
So as I was training, I was on the couch, someone's patient, and
Mhm.
you really, really start to know who you are. I discovered all sorts of things about myself, that I was a very social person, that I didn't know
Yeah.
that I was a social person. I loved
Yeah.
going to parties. Suddenly, what happened? So you really sort of start to know things, which is transformative.
Yeah.
From the beginning of training to when you graduate, you're a different person. You really know what's under. I mean, you don't know everything. There's probably still
Yes.
stuff I don't know, but you can really learn a lot about yourself. It's incredibly, incredibly liberating. So the training, being in the right place and having to undergo psychoanalysis myself saved my life. It helped me to know who I really was.
That is awesome, Doc. So here you are, you've discovered who you are in the sense that as you began to excavate all of the memories and the pains and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
as you were discovering you, what were some of those um, thinking process, those things that we put on the reel to reel, that we are constantly running within our subconscious that we're not aware of, but it's running day and night, night and day, day and night. And
Mm-hmm.
it turns into this big belief that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we are standing in front of it and go, whoa. And now we have to bring in tools to help us to manage this beast that we have given permission to
Mm-hmm.
grow by us just meditating on it in our life. What were some of those things that you discovered, and what tools did you bring into your space to help you to manage it?
I think probably, well, there are probably two things. The one largest thing was I had enormous anger towards my own mother, and I just was couldn't move past being angry at her. And as I talked more and more about her over the years, I realized the limitations that she had. She grew up without a father. She was not highly educated, and there were limitations. She had four children at a very young age, and she probably wanted more out
Yeah,
of life. So I think I came to a place where I was able to forgive her,
yeah,
which was very, very freeing for me. That I didn't have to carry that, holding that anger. That she was human, just like
yeah,
we are, and she did the best that she could. I mean, she was a very loving woman,
yeah,
and she did the best that she could. So there was that piece that was. The other piece was in group settings. I was always silent. I didn't. No one wanted because I was the black sheep at home. They would be like,
yeah,
"Whoever stop, be quiet. Wait, no, stop saying
yeah,
that." So I learned to be quiet in groups, and in
yeah,
the training, you're always in a group setting. We sit in a circle in the classroom, and it was so hard for me to talk. So it's at some point I worked through that, and I realized, what have I been doing all these years? I love talking. I have a lot to say. Really powerful things that changed in me. To going from carrying this anger and to like sitting silently in a group thinking no one wants to hear from me. So
yeah,
those things, of course, it took years, years and
yeah,
years of
yeah.
talking and
But
talking.
those are powerful things, though, to release anger.
Yeah.
Um, one of in my life, what I've noticed that trauma usually is housed emotionally, And the reason why I say that is when we would have a thought, it will trigger an emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
And we hold that in, and it can cause dis-ease to manifest in our bodies, our minds, of course it does, our emotional state, and so forth. And to have that release, it creates an unblocking, if you will, with that. And the fact that you're able to look back and to forgive is even more a powerful thing. And the other is finding your voice. That is a beautiful picture. Um, all of us have a voice. All of us have the right to speak, if you will.
Right.
And many of us are told, shut up, why don't you shut up? And
Mm-hmm.
many people have retracted their voice and is not able to speak that voice. Can you invite us there, Doc, for just a minute? When you remember that clearly, you know, it always comes, I tell people it comes like bolero. It'll start with that little drum and then it just escalates with this crescendo. When you remember that day, when you realize, wait a minute, I am, I have a voice. Um, how did that make you feel when you realized that I had a voice and you were able to, you know, you just laughed a little while ago when you said, I have a lot to say. Remind us, if you can, that day and how you felt when you realized, I have a voice.
I think there was a specific incident in a class with an instructor, and I was presenting some material about a student who was going to present, and the instructor was didn't like what I was saying. And this instructor, I had seen her be very vicious to other people.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't like what I was saying, and so I stopped, and I was expecting her to like lob my head off, and she didn't. And then I was in a group setting with her. We went back into the setting, and I said to her, how come you didn't lob my head off? I was expecting you to do that." And she said something, I can't remember exactly what she said, but something about she didn't want to do that or there was no need to do that. And I had this idea that perhaps the reason I was quiet in groups was because I was afraid of being killed.
Yeah,
She could have killed me in that group, metaphorically, and she
yeah,
didn't. And something in that switched for me that
yeah,
I thought, I can talk and I won't get killed. I don't know if she knew she was doing, maybe she
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Maybe she did. Something switched for me and my behavior started to change in groups. I started to become more comfortable and it was like, whoa, like the earth shook. Where did this come from? But it almost traumatic experience with this woman in this setting that didn't end badly. And I was
yeah,
expecting it to, did not. It was so incredibly powerful.
yeah. Nothing. We started this conversation saying nothing in life is without value.
Mm-hmm.
We may not see it
Right.
sometimes, but nothing is without value. And I tell people, even their job that they do, that they think is nothing, that job has value. You're learning principles there
Right.
that will be utilized in your
Right.
life. Trust me, it always will be. So here you are, you're in school, you've gotten it. Walk with us now when you came out of school, Doc, and you're like, I'm going to start a practice. How confident was this young girl? Because when she started out, she's like, I wasn't sure this, I wasn't sure of that, I wasn't sure. But here she's going into to become an entrepreneur, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a different space, a different mindset. How did she walk into that new arena with this young girl with all this growth and all of this other stuff that was going on?
Luckily, it happened slowly. I was still teaching while I was
Hmm.
doing training, and while I was doing my in those days, you could see patients before you were licensed. Nowadays, you can't. So I was
Yeah.
starting to slowly build my practice, and finally, my practice got large enough that I could leave teaching. So that was a scary step. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
regular. This is not. I finally built my practice enough to leave that. And then I went from a part-time office where I saw patients and I rented a full-time office. And I thought, oh, what am I doing? How am I going to pay there? And I just told myself, I have to take this step. Remember my husband saying, are you sure? Are you sure? I was like, yes. Father saying, yes, you can do this. In that office for 22 years. I just actually moved this weekend to another office. And the practice grew. I have more patients than I know what to do with. Just happened slowly, though, slowly.
Yeah. I want to encourage people that are listening to us right here because it's very important. I personally believe that housed within our gifts and that journey that you're on, housed within it is the ability to support yourself. It is a part of the plan. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that the designer of you, which is you, and the collective designer of all, would do that to us. I believe that they want us out there doing the thing,
Mm-hmm.
as Doc said, the thing that our dad said, you got to do what makes you happy. And so I believe that is in there for the purpose of you leaving so that you can be provided for there because your life is there. And
Yeah,
one of the last steps that one has to take is to relinquish, as you state, the steady job, the steady security money, because the other um, uh, area that you're walking into, and I believe that's what the purpose of the journey is. One of them is to teach us to walk by faith, because
yeah,
you have to trust something greater than you, greater than the program that they told us that you have to work the 9 to 5, and if you don't work the 9 to 5, you can't survive. Artists can't survive. Musicians, they tell you all kinds of stuff. Those are not true. That's
right,
just ways to keep you in the
right.
fence. So here you are. You started the practice, and now that you're getting into the minds of men. And you are about to embark on a journey that is going to take you to writing some pages on a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reading some of the excerpts of the book, the information as much as I can, because I told my folks, I said we got to order a couple of them because I want to get into that story. So here you are now. You are a collector, as they say. You are working with all the different belief systems, all of the different fearfulness, all of those things, the dark things that people claim that is dark, but it's keeping them from moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about some of those experiences that as you're now moving in full time, and what you started to learn as you are moving in that space.
Well, I knew that I enjoyed writing, and I've written probably 15 or 16 professional papers, published papers over the course of my career. I really enjoyed doing that. And I may have said this earlier too. I can't remember if I did. That I was preparing for a conference and I was writing up a full case of a patient I'd seen for a very long time. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, this is so much fun looking at someone's life over an arc of time and seeing how they've changed, where they were, how they've grown. I should write a novel.
Mhm.
Fiction, never in my life. I thought, what would it be about? And I had the idea, it'll be about a priest and a therapist and a scandal. And that was all that I knew. And then I just sat and started writing and developing some characters and putting this together. And before you knew it, I mean, it needed a lot of editing. I worked with a lot of
Yeah,
editors, putting it to photo. It took many years to get published, but I just really enjoyed telling stories. And so,
yeah.
of course, the story came from me, which I don't think I realized till the novel was finished. Clearly, that one of the main characters is a psychoanalyst. So
Yeah.
like, we write about what we know. And she's doing treatment with a patient through many scenes in the book. So all of that, I really just love to tell stories. It's my Shawnee grandmother.
Stories I tell, I say it appeals to both the right brain and the left brain
Mm,
thinkers. And so it activates all. And depending on which side you are. Some of those that um, are able to do both, you know.
Mhm.
And I believe through meditation and different ways that you can do both and be both. And but the in the stories though houses the data, you know.
Right,
And
right,
once you extract it, it's easy for one to understand, if you will. They say when Jesus was giving uh, parables, it was easy for the regular folks to get it and go, "Oh, I can get it," because they can relate to
right,
stories. Everyone
right.
can. And then when the people are gone, the disciples ask him for the deep stuff. Let's and he starts to going to the deeper stuff. So as you were going into the deeper stuff, what were some of those things? Because you cannot go into the deeper stuff of others and not discover deeper stuff of yourself. What were some of those things that you were still discovering about you as you were gaining more insight into the human condition called the mind, the subconscious mind? What
Mhm.
did some of those things you started uncovering about you?
It's a good question. What is bringing to mind is the first time I went to Ireland, probably 12 years ago, and I've been back 6 times since then.
Hmm.
First time I went there, I felt like it was home. My mother's mother was born in New Jersey. She was never went to Ireland, but she always talked about Ireland. So the first time I was there and I breathed in the air, I felt some sort of almost transcendental moment, like this is where I come from. This is I belong here. Like I wanted to
Yeah.
roll grass or something. It was so scary. That's what I wanted to do. So there was something in there from my history on my mother's side
Yeah.
I needed to know about. I mean, both of my parents were immigrants, and immigrants who came over in the 1850s or so didn't want to know about home. They didn't want to think about it. We knew very little about what city she came from, where did she, where was my great grandmother? We knew nothing. So there's part of me, part of my roots on both sides, mother and father, that were unknown. And I think when I went to Ireland, it felt like, oh, here, some part of me came from here. And
Hmm.
seeing and knowing this was just deeply, deeply therapeutic. That I felt like some lost part of me had been found. And it's all unconscious. I mean, this was never
Yeah.
talked about. It was viscerally powerful coming out of the airport in Dublin the first time I landed there.
I think our parents were traumatized. They were running from trauma there. They see it as a place of trauma. So, and that's why in many cases they don't want to go back there. It's a painful. And then when we go to it, it's a different experience because we're looking at it as much more as far as belonging, a connection, where
Right,
they were looking at it as, no, I don't want to go back in there at all. I want to go get my freedom. So
right.
as you are gaining all this insight, and again, you've been in the field for 30 plus years, within the mind and the subconscious of the human being. What were some of those things? Because I know I was reading some of it in the book, and it's really, really powerful book. And I was just getting pieces of it, and that's why I told my folks. I said, "You're gonna have to get a couple pieces of them, a couple books, and hand them out." As you began to develop these characters,
Mhm.
what drove you or what pulled you? Because I believe it's a pulling when we are given the information. What was it that sparked you when the thought came of the priest? Why, when you were looking in it, why the priest?
That answer is not even fully clear now. I mean, I grew up Catholic and we went to church and we were around priests a lot. So it was a familiarity. And I think my idea was going to be this man was studying to be a priest, but he didn't really want to do that. He was
Yeah,
doing that because he was hiding
yeah,
something. So that's part of his trauma. He didn't really want to be a celibate man, and he didn't want to do that. But he didn't know that. And through the course of the book, things happen. So I think that was my original idea, that he was hiding behind becoming a priest. That was where he was hiding. And then the other character, the psychoanalyst, she's hiding because she's lost her husband at a young age, and she's traumatized and she's closed down. And then
Yeah.
the third character is the priest's sister. They've been estranged since early childhood. She was sexually abused, and she acts out like crazy, promiscuously, getting in trouble all over the place. She's hiding, but she's a very talented artist. So at the university, they cut her some slack, and she ends up in treatment with this therapist. And then the therapist randomly meets the brother in adulthood, and they all
Yeah.
have this sort of connection that they don't know they have, because the two siblings have different last names.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, this plot kind of thickens. But they all need each other to get out of
Yeah.
it. To find the great they're all looking for, and they don't even know they're looking for it.
Yeah, that's the journey, isn't it? That we're all looking for something. We're looking for ourselves within the pain.
And
Um,
acceptance, and
yes.
grace, and looking for acceptance no matter what you've done, no matter who you
Yeah.
are, you want to be accepted for it. And you want to accept yourself, which
Yeah.
is probably our biggest enemies are probably ourselves.
Yeah, I believe it is ourselves. That's why I believe that I don't like the word conquer, when we love ourselves, when we have accepted the self, when we have began to hug the self, when we begin to do that, we switch in a way that we are much more approachable. We
Yeah.
um, we are more loving, accepting. All the things changes until when that happens. Because I remember mine, and I remember uh, having to accept the fact that in my mind I was broken,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it was okay. I
Mm-hmm.
was um, traumatized from abuse, and it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was a absolute mess, but I was okay. And I think when we look at that, and I try to tell people, perfection is the enemy of personal growth. There is no
Yeah.
such thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is one of the programs that we have to let go because they're programming you and I to look, think, act perfect. Um, and those skinny models have a price to pay to maintain that figure. And so everything has a price. And so
Right.
when you are looking at you, the power that is you, and you've come to that space and hug you and love you, and you've just begun to become powerful. You are becoming a designer of your life, and you're no longer a victim as you
Mm-hmm.
begin to learn how to process your thoughts and all of those different things. Which thought you give permission to grow, and which ones you do not allow to come in, because you've learned that you cannot allow certain thoughts to come in, because if you do, they will cause you to behave and act certain ways. So here you are, Doc, you're putting this book together. And guys, you're listening to this podcast, and you know how I always said over and over again, when you're reading a book, you are having a private one-on-one session with that author. And when you are reading and you are opening yourself to growth, you are in a space by which those words will become alive, and they have the ability to jump off of those pages and jump straight inside you and cause you to make decisions that will change your life. So you're having that private moment. The coffee is in your hand, the tea, the kids are asleep, the husband is in the corner, or the wife is in the corner, the girlfriend is gone, and you're sitting down reading, and the words are alive. Trust me, those words on those pages are alive, especially the book that Doc is talking about. And I want to encourage you guys to buy it for yourself, buy it for family members. All of us are on a journey. Every single one of us is on a journey. And the information that she has in that book is about these folks within their journey and how they were able to find themselves and find each other. So I want to challenge you guys to make sure that you get and buy it for presents for folks. So here you are, Doc. You are now this author. You've the book has been given birth. It's been delivered, and you had your editors looked at it and so forth. So now, when you look at you, all of this you have accomplished, 30 plus years, you've been in the trenches. You have now produced one of the desires of your heart. I ought to write a book. I love stories, and you're writing stories. What is this woman now, where she is, as she is looking at self? What is the conversation that she is having with her?
Wow. You ask hard questions. I think there's an enormous degree of satisfaction. There's also, anytime I've ever published anything, there's an enormous amount of terror. What have I people are going to read? And the profession of psychoanalysis is really one of hiding. The analyst does not really reveal themselves to the patient. It is a kind of hiding position. And then I write this book that my entire community and all of my patients may read. I've really come full circle from the quiet little girl who couldn't speak in a group to
Yeah,
reveal more than probably most psychoanalysts ever reveal.
yeah.
So it feels good, though. It feels like, okay, I've been doing this for 30 years. Patients will react how they react, and we'll work with that. And I think this novel has really, I think, made me come full circle to who I am. There's no hiding. There's no hiding. And I don't like to hide. I need to be out there. So it's only taken 65 years.
But you have arrived, you know. But it's a good place to be vulnerable. It's a good place to be, and when you get there, again, I believe when you're in that space, there's opportunity for growth at a greater and deeper level because you have been saying it from the beginning of this conversation. You always wanted to go deeper, and I believe this is an opportunity for you to even go deeper than
Yeah.
you ever thought that you can go. So, the fact that you are now open for everyone to see, I think that is great because they see who you are and you see who you are. And so that's a great space to be. So, you know, I think you should celebrate it. So I just want to thank you, Doc. This has been a great conversation. And again, guys, those that are listening to us, and I want you to go to, I'm going to provide all of her links and everything. I want you guys to get there. I want you to buy the books because, as I said, I started grabbing some excerpts of it. Where I am located in Thailand, I think I would have to buy, I have to ask you, is it in the ebook or something like that form?
And I'm recording the Audible version next month, so
Okay,
I'll be.
good. Perfect. So I'm going to get me one of those, the ebooks, so that I can begin to read it. Because as Doc says, I ask hard questions, and so maybe I can learn some more from her as I read um, her book and get some insight as well to help me. So, Doc, again, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This truly has been a powerful conversation that we have had here, and I really want to thank you so much for.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you. This is a very different kind of interview, but I really, really enjoyed it. I'm going to call you Doc from now on. Really,
uh,
thank you so much. Even with the technical difficulty at the beginning, but we pushed through it. So
yes, it's been my honor. Thank you so much.
thank you.